Hey friends, it's Paige Evans and I'm back with cut file 2 of 12. It's a heart grid and I've made a layout with it. So here is the finished layout and I'm going to walk you through from start to finish to show you how to recreate this page featuring, day 2 of 12 from my 12 Days of Love cut files. So I have started by die cutting the heart grid from white textured cardstock and I want to do mixed media on it. So I am going to paint white gesso over the entire background. So just picking up a little bit of gesso at a time, messily painting it on. It doesn't need to look a certain way, just want to get a nice even coverage of gesso across the background. It is a prep layer and helps with the absorption of additional paints, and mixed media just creates a nice foundation to hold said paint and mixed media. So just grab a paintbrush, paint on the gesso, and let it dry, or you can use a hair dryer to speed up the drying process. That's usually what I do. Speed it up with a hair dryer. So I'm almost done painting over the cut file. Once it's dry, I am going to bring in some watercolors and just lightly paint over. Say hello to my cat. That's Amy. Like I said in my previous video, because I'm doing a process video for all 12 cut files from this exclusive bundle, my 12 Days of Love cut files. Anytime I bring out the mixed media, they just want to see what's going on. So I am painting all of the sections with a light color of watercolors. I'm going to use my Bloom Street collection to embellish this page, which has mostly pastel colors. So I am sticking to pastel colors for painting the background just to give it a little something extra. It's a handmade touch rather than leaving it completely white. Just wanted to try something different and paint over it and make it special. And yeah, that was my reasoning. And then I'm going to splatter watered down white acrylic paint on top just to give it some extra oomph, some extra texture. I really love white acrylic paint splatters as a perfect finishing touch. So I'm just splattering my paintbrush, tapping it with my fingers. And then I'm going to use liquid gold paint. So this is from Paper Fashion. It was made a few years ago from American Crafts, but just watered down gold paint and splash it across, and it will give the background some extra sparkle and shine. So once the background is done drying, I have cut 4 photos into heart shapes so that they will fit behind these 4 heart sections. So I've just cut the photos slightly larger than the inner heart so that the photo edges have something to adhere onto on the back of this cut file. You can play with the placement of your photos across this background. You don't have to put them in this exact same order. You could back all of the hearts with photos. You can back just 1 or 2. You can just play with however many photos you want to include. So I'm using liquid glue, this is by Bearly Art, to attach my photos in place. Flip it over, looks good. These are just some fun moments from 2021 that I wanted to include. And now I want to add some hand stitching details. I love hand stitching. So I am using a paper piercer and I'm going to poke a hole about an 1/8 inch, maybe a 1/4 inch spaced around all of the hearts that have the photos behind them. So I'm going to stitch 4 hearts. At this point, I'm just poking the holes so that I can add the hand stitching. I'm going to do a chain link stitch, and to do this, I'm using white DMC embroidery floss, and I'm using all 6 strands. So I've threaded it onto the needle, I've tied a knot at the end. This first stitch, I'm going to create 2 stitches. So just come up through the first hole, down the next hole, back through the first hole, and down through the same next hole. Bring the needle up through the next hole and then do a chain link behind the first loop. Pull it taut, not tight. You don't want to tear your paper, and then go back down into the hole. Go out the next hole, bring your needle behind to do the loop or the chain link, and down through the same hole. Go out the next hole. You'll pass your needle behind the previous threads and do the link. And again, you just want to pull it taut, not too tight. If you pull it tight, you're going to tear the holes. And continue stitching, doing the chain link stitch around all of the hearts that you would like to. You could do the chain link stitch around every single heart, but I'm just doing it around the photos to draw attention to the photos and create a really fun and textured frame and border. I wear a glove. It helps because my hands are sweaty, and it helps so the needle doesn't hurt my fingers. It just really creates a barrier, protective barrier, and helps my hand not hurt as I'm hand stitching. So I always have a glove as I'm stitching. Now, if you are going to create this layout, I suggest backing all of the sections before adhering it down onto this background that I'm doing now. I wasn't planning on backing the sections with pattern paper, but I decided it needed more color, and so adding papers to the back of this cut file after it was already glued onto the background was a bit of a challenge. It's totally doable, as you'll see, but I do recommend not gluing it down as I'm doing now until after you've backed it. So once you've finished backing it, then you can glue it down onto a piece of cardstock or a piece of pattern paper. I'm just using another piece of textured white cardstock by American Crafts as my background. Using liquid glue to add it in place, and then I'm going to machine stitch it with my Brother sewing machine, white thread by Coats & Clark, and a basic running stitch, and just going around the edge. And again, I wouldn't do this step until after you've backed it, and yeah, but I wanted to add the textured border, and also the machine stitching helps attach the cut file onto the background in place permanently. It's not going anywhere anytime soon. And you could use gold thread instead of white thread. That would bring out the gold paint splatters, or this is a completely optional step. You don't have to add hand stitching. You don't have to add machine stitching, but I love doing those two things. Hand stitching, machine stitching, all the stitching. So I'm trimming off the thread, and here we go. So now I've decided it needs more color. So I'm bringing in my Bloomstreet collection, and I thought about trimming down the sides and having that colorful hearts watercolory background be a border. In the end, I decided not to do that. I'm measuring the size of one of the sections, and I believe it was about 2¼ maybe 2½ inches. There are a few different watercolor papers in Bloomstreet. There's a green one, there's a pink one, I believe there's a yellowy one, and so I really feel like these watercolor papers match and enhance the watercoloring that I did across the background in one of the first steps. So I'm trimming squares of pattern paper to back all of the remaining hearts sections that are these open hearts. So there's solid hearts and there's lined hearts. So all of the lined heart sections I'm backing with watercolory pattern papers. And like I said, this step would be much easier before attaching it onto your background. So learn from my mistakes and back it before you adhere it. But as you can see, it works out. I'm still able to tuck the squares of pattern paper into place and then adhere them with dabs of liquid glue. And here I go, continuing sliding and tucking these watercolor pattern papers. There's that one yellow floral paper. There wasn't a bright watercolored paper in a brighter yellow color, so I chose the closest paper as I could, which was this lighter yellow floral. I just wanted to bring out more yellows. I'm creating an overall rainbow look, so I don't have two of the same color next to each other. Got all of the colors spread around. I believe this is the last one, I think. So tucking this final square of watercolor looking paper into place. It's a little difficult to get in there, but it works out. All good. And I want to back one of the hearts with, I guess all of the hearts. I want to back all of the lined hearts with slightly more pattern papers, but still keeping with the pastel tones, the pastel colorway. So this pattern paper is light pink and it's got some daisies and bees. And so I'm using one of the inner hearts from when I originally cut out the cut file as a template to cut out a heart slightly larger. And that way the edges can grab onto the back of the cut file. And I've gone ahead and cut out the rest of the hearts off camera. So I'm going to back these hearts. I didn't use a very patterned paper on all of them. As you can see, I used that green watercolor paper again for that heart on the right, kind of a clover paper, a mint one on the left. So just very slightly, mostly still solid pattern papers to back the hearts, all of them in these pretty pastels. Don't want to go with anything too bright that would really draw attention to that pattern paper, so I want to keep it very light and pastel. Two more hearts to back. So here is a white background with some pastel words. For this very last heart, I'm cutting a piece of white textured cardstock because this is where I want to have the title, so it will stand out more from a white background instead of a pattern paper. This way your eye can really gets drawn to the title. So I'm gonna start gluing things in place using the Bearly Arts liquid glue on the back of the lined hearts. Glue everything in place, make sure it's not gonna go anywhere. There we go. So I'm loving the way this is looking. It's super fun. All the hearts, all the pastels, and going to use Bloom Street to embellish the rest of it. So I'm going to use the title Sunshine. These are from the puffy stickers, and I'm going to fit it inside this heart as best as I can. Some of them will be overlapping, and I want to make sure to secure them in place with liquid glue once I figure out the final placement so that they don't fall off over the years. Here's where I'm going to add journaling eventually. I like how this heart journaling spot is in the pastel colorway. It's a light purple, and on the same sheet of the sentiments there are a whole bunch of hearts. So that's going to be the name of the game, is hearts and hearts and hearts, and they also are in the pastel colors. So I'm just trying to scatter them pretty evenly around the background so that your eye is drawn all around the page. So instead of clustering them in one section, I want to put them in between some of the hearts, on the edges, in the corners, and that just, again, helps draw the eye all around the page. From the cardstock stickers, there's also pastel hearts. So it's fun to have hearts in all different kinds of mediums. So you've got pattern paper hearts, cardstock hearts, puffy sticker hearts, cardstock sticker hearts. From the sentiments, I'm trying to pick and pull sentiments and words that I feel go along with the photos that I've chosen, just some happy moments from 2021. So Sunshine and Happiness is from the ephemera die cuts, Happy, One of a Kind, and then there are these puffy word alphabet stickers. So in a few of the hearts, I'm going to add a few words. I think I'm going to add 3 of them, so it creates a visual triangle. Again, it's another technique to help draw the eye all around the page to have similar embellishments placed in a triangle. So the love, the fun, and the yes are in the visual triangle, and then just trying to figure out the exact sentiment that I want to place in this heart. I think any of them work. It's just deciding on the final one. The last step will be to write journaling, and so I went through my pen stash and found a lavender pen that is pastel and goes along with the colors of the layout. I'm just going to write on this heart journaling spot my thoughts and feelings about these photos. So that, my friends, is this finished layout. This was day 2 of 12 of my 12 Days of Love cut files. This is the heart grid background. I've used my Bloom Street collection and mixed media and hand stitching, machine stitching, hearts, hearts, hearts. Lots of fun things, lots going on. It's kind of busy, but in the end, I think it works and it's a nice balance. Let me know if you have any questions, and I will leave a link to where you can purchase these cut files in the description. Thank you so much, and I will see you again tomorrow with another process video. Have a fantastic day.